in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. This meeting is an in-person meeting at the location listed above, which is 870 Colfax in Benton Harbor, Michigan. In addition, a live stream of this meeting is available at the following link. Questions may be submitted beforehand to liz.goodwin@bhas.org or presented in person during the public comment section as indicated in the agenda. Board members may be contacted through the emails listed below. Requests for special assistance, including for persons with disabilities, may be sent to liz.goodwin@bhas.org. I call this meeting to order officially at 5:38 p.m. We will begin by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liz, in absence of Secretary Triplett, can you please call roll? Present.
Vice President Collins.
Present.
Trustee Burton. Present. Trustee Gavin.
Present.
Trustee Creighton. President Triplett. Trustee Doyle. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. A quorum has been established. Next, we have approval of the agenda. If you notice, we have the Q&A with Gloria Chapman from MDE. We have a visual of the podcast virtual town hall. We have purchase of custodial equipment and then the FPE field trip request information. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? The motion has been made by Vice President Bowens and supported by Trustee Rocket Martin. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, Liz, can you please?
Question.
You have the
President
floor.
Robinson, the Q&A, that portion, is that just for the board or is that for the public as well?
Ms. Chapman, do you have a preference? It's not many of us here. She's asking the Q&A with you. Is that for the board only, or may the public ask you questions in your presence? Okay, so it's only about, what, 4 members of the public present? So we'll open it to the public if there's any questions as well. Any additional questions?
No, thank you.
All right. Liz, in the absence of Secretary Triplett, can you please call a roll for approval of the agenda?
Yes. President Robinson.
Yes.
Vice President Bowens.
Yes.
Trustee Rocket Martin.
Yes.
Trustee Gavin.
Yes.
All right, next we have review of our board norms, the Board of Education norms for Benton Harbor area schools. We will treat each other with respect. We will listen to learn. We will refrain from side conversations. We will use our time wisely, starting and ending our meetings on time. We will challenge ideas, not people. We will ask questions when in doubt. There will be no surprises at the board table. We will practice the 7 norms of collaboration. Those are pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions, putting ideas on the table, providing data, paying attention to self and others, and presuming positive intent. Next, we have public comment on agenda items. I know that we have the presentation with Ms. Chapman, but is there anyone here that would like to make a public comment on an agenda item before we get started? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the first item of business. Just a reminder that as of 9/13/2022, all comments for the board are limited to 2 minutes per trustee per topic. But of course, this is a Q&A, so you may have questions that go beyond the 2-minute limit, so we'll be flexible. I would like to welcome Ms. Chapman from the Michigan Department of Education to provide us a Q&A regarding the partnership agreement. You have the floor. Liz, can you now take the record that Ms. Creighton is present? Treasurer Creighton, as of 5:42 p.m. All right, so welcome. I would like to begin by thanking you for traveling here to the district so that we would be able to have an opportunity to speak with you as a whole. 2 of our trustees were unable to be available, but we'll do our best in asking any particular questions that we have in their absence. So I'm not sure if you wanted to start with a brief presentation or if you just wanted to go right into questions and answers.
I think I'd like to start with a brief presentation.
All
And the
right.
purpose would be to make sure that everyone has just a general understanding. I also would like to remind people that a template, the template of the partnership agreement can be found on our OPD, Michigan Department of Education website. So that's the format for everything. And only thing that would be missing right now would actually just be the draft of your outcomes that have been established.
All right, you have the floor.
Okay, all right, so the partnership agreement, I'm sorry, I have a little bit of sinus, so I hope this is coming through clearly. And I also needed to know how much time did we? So,
Go ahead. I'm not gonna interrupt you.
okay, all right. So the partnership agreement is a 3-year agreement. This is very different from the agreement that you had years ago. This is truly a partnership between the district, MDE, your ISD, and other members that we come together. And the goal is to work on what you have already identified as the academic outcomes for your district. Sorry. I always want to say Birmingham for some reason. But Benton Harbor Area Schools has a strategic plan. You were identified back in November along with 50 other partnership districts throughout the state of Michigan because you had low performing schools within your district. There's a cutoff point. The Office of Partnership District, our sole goal is to work with those districts who have been identified and fall within that lowest 5% of low performing schools. So we have a mix of traditional schools as well as PSAs. In this identification, we are also charged with ensuring that we work and provide the necessary supports needed for you to move out of the lowest 5%. And so we have developed the partnership agreement. The partnership agreement, the big word I want you to keep in mind is partnership. And the other thing I want you to keep in mind, there is no closure. And when you think about the old partnership agreement and how that looked, there is no closure of schools. You are the driving force. You also worked when I arrived here, or I was identified to come to Benton Harbor. You had already identified academic outcomes that you knew and wanted to see improve within your district. You have what we call a strategic plan basically in place already. So we value that strategic plan. MDE's goal is not to come in here and tell you about your community or your district. So we looked at the strategic plan. We also looked at our Michigan Improvement Continuous Plan. We did a total data dive and we had a full team. Your leadership team, Dr. Butt's leadership team, the ISD, because everyone is an integral part. So the community's part was developing your strategic plan and identifying those components. One of those goals you already had was literacy. We did, again, through MyKIP, we did an additional dive. We looked at the data and we said, yes, we need to focus, continue to focus. So how do we embed what you've already said and identified as something that needs to be addressed within your district? So the goals, the interim, and I'll call them interim, and then the outcomes. So the interim are the 18-month at which we take a look and say, how are you doing? And there is no punishment, for lack of a better word, if you don't meet the goals, because this is a partnership. So if we're here to really help, then the questions are, what is it that's missing? What haven't we done that we need to do better at? What's missing? Because the goal is at the end of the 36 month, you want to be able to say, yes, we're on track for having met that goal. Right now, where you stand, you're at the lowest in terms of academic outcomes. And so moving that forward We know that that does not happen overnight. And we know that the partnership agreement is only a 3-year agreement. So your plan that you had already started and said as a board, as a community, this is our focus, this is what we want to work on. That's where this partnership agreement comes into play. Because we're using that along with what we found in the MyKIP. And out of that is the outgrowth of the goals that you need established for the partnership agreement. So in the partnership, there are requirements. One of the requirements is literacy. We know that with all of our partnership districts, all of the students are struggling. The pandemic did not help. So literacy, you can't have a partnership district, or you can't talk about being part of the lowest performing, and then you don't have a literacy goal. So our piece was to say, we need to make sure, and you again, community strategic plan, you have already identified that piece in terms of saying, this is what we need. Our students need to be better in literacy because they can't do anything else unless they have a firm foundation in that. The other thing that we required was math, technology, all the different things that are happening in this world today. So those are the two pieces, along with the goal around SEL. The SEL is social emotional learning. Our kids suffered a lot. They were already behind and suffering in a lot of areas. The pandemic just created an even wider goal. I'm not telling you anything that you're not already aware of. But when we talk about students, we talk about your students, your community. What is it that we need in order to help them be successful in school? Chronic absenteeism. Some of the students that we saw before the pandemic, we still haven't been able to find. So that's an issue. What's happened to our students? Where are they? What's keeping them from coming to school regularly? So you can have the greatest program, but if you lack the students, if they're not coming for whatever purposes, then we've got an issue. So those are the 3 areas that we were asked to address in this partnership agreement. Everything that's contained in the partnership agreement is based on 22P, which is the MCL regarding partnerships. I'm going to keep stressing this word because I want everyone to clearly understand it. The partnership is just that. You are driving the partnership agreement. We're not, like I said, we have our requirements because we always have to have requirements, but you're driving your accountability. You're driving the goals, but you identified the goals when you identified your strategic plan. And so your strategic plan is a 5-year plan, Dr. Butts?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a 5-year plan. The partnership agreement is only 3 years. So by not asking you to do something different or to veer off on a different path, but to really come under the same umbrella, strategic plan, partnership agreement embedded in that for the next 3 years. Let's focus on the literacy, focus on the math, focus on the SEL. Okay. Now, you could be re-identified. And if you are re-identified, if you fall in that 5% again, then you determine what those accountability measures are. You already have them within your agreement. That's what you looked at the other day in terms of going through and said, these are some of the things that we're thinking about in terms of accountability. So the state is not coming in saying that you have to do X, Y, and Z. The state is asking you to determine through the partnership agreement what those accountability measures will be. You have 5, the reconstitution, and then the other 4 that you listed after that. You decide which one or how you're going to implement that. So if you're re-identified, then you would come back. You would identify under one of the accountability measures, which one you're going to utilize. One of them involves curriculum. So that could be, we have a new curriculum, we don't feel like it's been fully implemented, or we had new staffing, or materials didn't arrive. There could be a myriad of reasons. But you could say we're going to continue with this, or perhaps the goal would be not to use this curriculum, but to look for something else. Now, let me back up with just one thing. In terms of the agreement, the goals that you establish are the goals that you have throughout the 3 years. So you have a literacy goal. We keep that for the duration of the partnership agreement, and that cannot be changed. But you can change the strategy. So if, for example, you say, we wanted a particular curriculum or how this was going to look in the classroom, and that doesn't seem to work. Students don't seem to be engaged in this, and we need to go back. So you can change that. But the data through the MyKit process, the data that you reviewed when you went over and you looked at developing your strategic plan, all said that literacy was a concern and an area that needs to be addressed. So changing the strategies, because again, it's about, we don't want to work, have kids doing things if they're not going to be successful at it. So we don't need 3 years to stay on that particular course. We can look at it, adjust it as needed. Things that are going well, we can push more into those areas. Your ISD, the superintendent and his team have been on site for the meetings. Their goal is to listen and to participate, to understand what is it that Benton Harbor needs? What is it? How can we be more supportive? So everyone focus, we're all in the same boat, all traveling in the same direction. You're the driver of this. Again, there are requirements, but I want you to remember that nowhere are we talking about the state coming in and taking over, the state coming in and closing down the school. I can't take that away from you. I understand the feeling behind that, but right now, where we are says there's a sense of urgency. We need to focus in on how we're going to improve the academic outcomes for each and every one of your students. They deserve a quality education, and that's what all of our jobs are about. So me driving here today is not about me. It's really about wanting to see the academic outcomes and having kids fulfill their dreams. Okay. So I'm going to stop.
Are there any questions from the board at this time? Okay, so we'll
I
get,
have questions.
go ahead, you have the floor.
So I guess one of my questions, and this may be for the school district, is this partnership agreement, the template, the state is being transparent with their process. And we represent all of the residents, but they are not privy to this partnership agreement. And we have to sign this on the 17th. So I'm wondering, is it possible for the public to also be able to review the draft, understanding that it is a draft prior to signing? Have any schools done that?
So the schools, the other school districts that we're working with?
Yes, ma'am.
Pretty much the same thing that we're doing here today. Boards have been involved. The superintendent has kept the board and community aware. It's within the document itself that Dr. Butts is responsible for reporting to the board, the updates regarding the agreement. There are other opportunities, however you decide that you want to design those kinds of things. Again, that's another option. And I think you said, you have some things, some community meetings, those kinds of things that you've been working with in terms of keeping the community informed in terms of what's going on with the partnership district or the agreement.
Yes, we've put together a video and presented to the board. We wanted to make sure that there's a clear understanding. We'll preview it again tonight and we'll make sure we release it. As far as the public having access, after speaking with you earlier and speaking with our board president, we will be releasing the draft copy as well online so that people can see it and have a chance to look at the work that's been done.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. My other question is, I have a concern.
Excuse me.
Oh, there were other, I thought nobody had questions.
She was asking if you could speak into the mic.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought somebody had a question. My other question is, according to one of the MCLs, it says that the district shall review whether the current principal of the school should remain as principal or be replaced. And I'm just wondering, it feels vague enough. Is that something that's left to the discretion of the district, or, if the goal is not met, what does that entail? What would the district be required to do to show that they are looking at reviewing the employment of our principals? I just feel like sometimes that can be damaging. And I just want to make sure that we are not forced to put our principals in any type of unstable
No, so
situation.
what you're speaking of, again, goes back to those accountability measures.
Mhm.
And so there were 4. I think E kind of just covers that you look at everything. So you look at finances, E refers to taking a look at finances, looking at staffing, looking at the totality of what's going on in the district. So when or if you are re-identified, then again, that's another meeting, you come back together. We look at what's keeping us in this place. What is it that we need? Where are we on this spectrum? So my goal, like I'm sure everyone else, we want to see the needle move, or the trajectory move in a upward trend. If we can see that things are moving, then we know that what we're doing is working in the right direction. If you're re-identified, it's not a bad thing. I mean, everyone says, I don't want to be part of a partnership district, but remember, if you've taken those initial steps and things are working, it means that, you know what, maybe we need more time, or we need to look at systems within our district. So you could be looking at curriculum, but you can't look at staffing as just one piece. If you choose, I think it's E in the draft, if you select, that's what we're going to do, then you're looking at the district as a whole. What is it? Maybe you have a staff member who needs additional training. So how will you support that additional staff member? And so that might be the ISD coming in, and the ISD, one of their expectations, they're required to support you and say, okay, so, we've identified 2 or 3 different staff members, and they're still struggling with the curriculum. How much time can you devote to being here and providing that additional coaching and support? So nothing in here is about taking away. It's all about how we can get to the end goal.
Thank you for that. So we wouldn't be required to,
You're only
remove our
required to
staff.
you're required to identify which of those accountability measures you are going to implement. Okay.
okay. Yeah, with it,
I had a
I
question,
don't
but
want
you
to hog
can
it.
go ahead.
The other question that I have is that there's a requirement for increasing like the number of certified teachers, or it looks like there's something in here that requires
I'm not sure what you're making reference to.
okay.
While she's looking that up, my question, you did indicate that we could potentially be re-identified. And I'm wondering, what is that window of time where you all would potentially re-identify us as a school district? Is that within the 3 years, or is that after the 3
So
years?
when the school index comes out,
Mhm.
the school index is what identified you this time. That came out in November. So if you're re-identified, then when the school index comes out, the list of schools, and then the list of schools that fall within that 5%, or if you have a high school graduation rate is below 67%. So there are parameters around, or information around, that re-identification.
Okay. The other question that I had, I believe that Dr. Bucks clarified with you, and I asked him specifically to ask you whether or not the partnership agreement was something that required board vote for approval, because it does request my signature.
Right, so it doesn't require a board vote,
Okay.
but what it does require, again, that's why, you were invited, or I should say not you, but the board.
Mhm.
The board was invited because we wanted to make sure that everyone understood exactly what this agreement is, what it involves. And so there are expectations for the board in terms of how they're supporting the agreement through your superintendent, through things that you might pass in terms of how finances, if there's a new curriculum. Dr. Butts comes and says, I need these curriculum materials. We need to have a couple of half days. So all of those things are things that you're already doing. So the tie-in with this now is when asked for those things, how does it tie into the partnership agreement, which then feeds back to your strategic plan, which is what you had agreed to originally. So again, we don't want to add more work, and we don't want to take away from what we need to do, which is be in the classrooms, working on doing what we need to do in order to implement what needs to be done for the students. And so as little interruption as possible in terms of how that flows, but the consistency, your strategic plan, 5 years, partnership agreement, 3. And we know that turnaround takes longer than that. And we also know that you don't have teachers. And that's something that all of us are struggling with across the state.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to speak to. There have been past consent agreements, partnership agreements, all types of agreements that have required us to eliminate 25 and 50% of our staff, which contribute, to that number. We're called the lowest performance, but actually we've just kind of been, one of the biggest targets of the state, and there's very little acknowledgement of that. There's a section on here that speaks to increasing the numbers of certified teachers in areas of shortage, and we're in the nation's biggest teacher shortage that I've ever seen. And so I'm wondering, is the state willing to assist with any type of funding that would allow us to be more competitive, to be able to pay our teachers and staff more that are here, who took 10%, who took major cuts, and then also, help us with the funding side of being able to attract viable staff?
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for that question, because the teacher shortage is real. And it probably hurts more of us than it affects the larger group. So we feel the greatest need. So in terms of retention, we do have 21H funds available. We have 6 million this year. Application, Dr. Butts, you received the information, I think just yesterday of that, about the application window opening.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that would be the other part. All that we are looking for is the alignment. So when you say teacher recruitment, retention, how does that align with what you need to do in terms of your partnership agreement? And so when you make your application, and Ms. Davis will be very instrumental in helping you to craft it so that you can get the maximum amount of funding that you can in terms of being able to do that. So 2 things. We start you out on the path, but we also want to look at and project what happens when the 21H funding goes away, right? And so when you talk about board responsibilities, fiscal responsibility, what does that look like? In terms of how will you, it's great to have it, but if it goes away, yeah, then what do you do? So long range, those are kind of the questions that as you're looking at this, it's not just the partnership agreement. It's the long range stability of just overall everything that you're doing in terms of the district, because you don't want to do this constant ping back and forth. I would say that, given what you're trying to do, getting the application in, next steps after we finish finalizing and everything, getting that application in, and every year, we receive funding. We just never know how much funding we're going to receive. And so, but with 51 districts, I'm thinking that the legislative might be a little bit more generous and giving us additional funds. And not only do we have the 6 million for this round, but then again, next November, we're hoping that we will have additional funds as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? All right, hearing none, I'll open to see if there's any questions from the public. You have the floor. If you can come to the mic and identify yourself.
Thank you.
Mhm.
My name, my name is Jeanette Holton, and I just have a question that I'm hoping I'm asking a question for clarification that makes sense. Because I've just now taken a look at the template. And I had a question in the school accountability measures to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, because I realize this is just a template. But if the school district doesn't improve within the 36 months and is re-identified, then the wording says that the district, the ISD, authorizer name if applicable, and MDE will impose one of the mutually agreed upon measures. And then the measures are A, reconstitute, and then B, other accountability measures. So am I clear on that so far, that I've got that right?
So there are two things.
You probably want the microphone if there's anybody wants to.
Okay. So there are two things, and it's a little bit confusing. The partnership agreement is one template. We have a template, so we have it for traditional and we have PSAs. You're only looking at what you're responsible for under the traditional. And so you have to be very careful when you're going through and you're reading the words, because some of it is a may and it's a must. So for the traditional district, you are required, according to 22P, to meet the requirements of a partnership agreement, which is to develop one, to get your interim targets and your outcomes. But also in terms of accountability, you have to identify what accountability measure you will impose if you are re-identified. So the draft that we have right now has, and Dr. Butts, if you can help me out with the 4 that you have.
Yes, sir. So from E. From part E. Increase ISD support, increase instructional support, internal review of strategic plan to ensure alignment with priority goals, update 3 to 5 year strategic plan with the school board, which includes an assessment of all aspects of our district's operations, including curriculum, instruction, assessment, student services, and support services.
Okay, thank you. So if you're re-identified, the district is responsible, along with the team, the partnership agreement team, in deciding which one of those accountability measures will be implemented.
So what if there's a disagreement between the school district and the MDE
No, it's not. So,
about which one to impose?
okay. All right. MDE is not driving this from that standpoint. We're not, you have in this agreement identified your own accountability measures. MDE did not put those measures in, the one that Dr. Butts just read. Okay, he put those in based on, this is where we have identified our gaps to be. And if we are re-identified, then the team needs to come back and look at which one of those accountability measures will be apply. So MDE's role in this is to make sure that you pick one of those, you follow through on which one of those you have identified as wanting to be implemented for next steps for accountability.
Wish that was a little clearer in the draft.
It's,
It's a little scary in the draft.
well, I apologize. We're not trying to be scary. But I will say that sometimes between all the federal requirements and the state requirements, it's a lot of information, yeah, that you have to kind of take your time and digest. But remember, my first word was partnership. You're the driver. There are certain requirements that you have to meet in terms of getting out of the lowest 5%. And I will say that meeting your targets for the 18-month does not guarantee that you'll be out of, out of the lowest 5%. Because remember, everybody else is going up as well. And the school index number could change. So the goal is sustainability. What is your plan? And what does that trajectory look like? If it's trending in the upward motion, then you're moving in the right direction and you need to continue to do that. So the goals where you are right now, you're doing a lot of different things in terms of your grant, your literacy grant, all of that. Again, we're just gonna really put our heads down and barrel through this because there's a lot of support, but we got to make sure that everybody's moving in the right direction. And we also need to be able to come back to you and report, this is where we are, this is what it looks like, this is where we're still struggling. And the struggling parts, now what are we going to do? You don't need anyone to come in and tell you where your struggling parts are. What we're doing is asking you to look at what's needed and then how can we play a role in helping to support you to get through those struggling parts.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the public? You have the floor, and Mr. Corson actually has a mic or for her, so you can come up. Ms. Triplett.
Okay. All right, good evening, Marion Triplett, 818 South Crystal Avenue, Benton Charter Township. I guess I would first like to say, so my husband, full disclosure for anybody who doesn't know me, my husband is the board secretary, but he follows your processes and is not going to violate. I don't know what's in it and I don't ask him to, and vice versa, because we're involved in a lot of different things. But I wanted to ask, you mentioned the data dive, and I wondered if the data dive looked at the impact of the Department of Ed historically, Barry and Risa historically, so that it doesn't repeat those actions that helped contribute to where Benton Harbor area schools is now. If they don't identify where they erred intentionally or unintentionally in contributing to the state of public school here, they'll continue to repeat it. And so if they have not, I'd like to see that data included in this as well. Because when people raise the issue that they're going through again, something that they remember going through in the past, we've got to have a way. I'm not against necessarily partnership, but everybody has to have the same standard of accountability. So do you have data on, can Department of Ed, can Barry and Risa, given their role in assisting the district, identify the years and the actions that undermine public education in Benton Harbor area schools?
So, Ms. Triplett, I think that's all part of your data story. You know, when we talk about Benton Harbor, in terms of where that fits in the scope, I don't know that we necessarily have data, but it is part of the historic. And I don't want to demean or devalue, right? Because it is about how we use the history in terms of using that to project what we're going to do in next steps. Benton Harbor, Like I said, you've had a consent agreement, you've had all kinds of different things. You've had a lot of different people, a lot of superintendents in and out of the district. So the data is saying, when we think about what the data dive is about, it's about your data story. Tell us who Benton Harbor is. So yes, it includes all of that. Where have you been? What are our next steps? The superintendent for Berrien Springs, and like I said, his team, they are thoroughly invested and ready to work. Everybody has agreed, this is what we need to do. This is where we need to be. And so everybody is on the same page. Unfortunately, we can't erase what happened before. I can only tell you about what the expectation is, and they have expectations that they have to adhere to in this agreement as well. And it's about what is it that Benton Harbor needs? How do we support that through our coaches, professional learning, all the different things that an ISD would provide. And so they're totally on board and ready to work.
I appreciate that. But until they can identify where they err in contributing to the troubles that we are at risk of having the same. See, our ISD was part of the segregation plan. Our Michigan Department of Ed was part of the segregation plan. Even most recently, Trustee Gavvin's question about the pressure that could be put on staff. My man went through that. So it's still present. If the Michigan Department of Ed wants it to be that way or has alternative means. And I'm just suggesting, I'm not saying don't support the partnership agreement, but let's be real and completely truthful, because it's not this board of duly elected officials, it's not those families that are out there, it's not the children that come to the school district that are going to do themselves in. It is all the other structures that we have difficulty battling with that are not held to the same accountability standard as our district. That's all I'm saying.
So everyone has a role in terms of their accountability in this. You are being assigned or already have been assigned a liaison from MDE who will work. I will also be the other person as I'm an assistant director. So I will also be here coming through again, because it is about, we can't erase what happened in the past. I can't go back there. I can honor, we can respect that, absolutely. But we can't change what happened in the past. What we've got to focus on, and the sense of urgency behind this, every day that our students sit in classrooms and they don't have the things that they need, they don't have teachers who are prepared to give them the information and the education that would help support them. That's a crisis, because now we've got a second grader who's now going to third grade. So our goal is we have to, again, honor and respect what happened. I can't tell you, I really understand. I'm from Detroit. I've gone through Detroit public schools. I understand what you're saying, but the sense of urgency in how we can all come together and work and get this job done. Benton Harbor has a lot of great things, but we have to be able to show that and move kids forward. Every day we waste is another day that someone's dream, some child's dream is just not being able to be fulfilled. Because when they get to college or career technical school or whatever it is they choose to be, they discover they don't have the necessary skills to compete with the other kids in some of those classes. When they get to college, our kids are dropping out. When they get to college, they get discouraged because now someone says you need remedial class. And that's not fair. There's nothing wrong with our kids. I think at this point, what we have to do is how do we take what you said, but how do we also move that, not forgetting what the history has done, but how do we move forward and do something different that would help support it?
President Robinson,
Yes.
ma'am. Just a follow-up to that, in relation to the document, I would like to know if there's something that could be added to the document that speaks to what Mrs. Triplett is saying. It's brief.
You're making a suggestion of what can be
I
added
would
or?
like to know if a certain item can be added to
So
the document that speaks to what.
I think
uh-huh.
if we're gonna add something, then I think that it would become part of the MyKIP, your data story. Within the data story for MyKIP, you have an area where it talks about who is Benton Harbor Area School. And you can place a statement or two that would capture the essence of what Mrs. Triplett has just said. Because it is the history, it isn't an integral part, but I think that's where it is because it gives that story for anyone else coming through. What was it that got us to this place? And so I think that's yeah.
My question's a little bit.
Okay, I'm gonna allow Miss, I don't know if that was your only question or if you had another. Okay,
I'm gonna be quick though. but-
okay, go ahead with your second
Well,
question.
then so mine gets to kind of the next one is about the issue about conflict of interest with partners. In the document, is there anything that requires a non-compete on programs or services or insider information about the things this district is attempting to do? That includes grants, fundraising, access to resources, because you can't have a partner that is also competing with you for the same dollars, for the same population that has privilege. And so I don't know what you have in the document, but if there should be some measure to address conflicts of interest from your partners.
So you identified your partners.
No, I don't, but they with y'all have.
Okay, so.
But, because it doesn't make sense to be in partnership with someone who's working to shovel out your foundation.
That's true.
They might be popular, but they may not be the one to help you do this work if you really want to be successful. I don't know if there's an evaluation tool in the agreement to evaluate the partner's contributions, and if you have policies to remove them if you find out that they're working contrary to the success of Benton Harbor area schools without being penalized by MDE for trying to remove them. Because that would tie back to the history. If you're showing bad again, you don't need to tell me again. You got to get out of here.
So again, the partnership agreement, you select your partners. MDE does not select the partners.
I understand. Well, I'm looking at you, but I'm speaking to them. You
Okay.
know what's in it and how
Yeah,
it works.
Right.
But this is what I'm asking. This is what I'm suggesting, because that's also been part of the process. We got wonderful programs going hither and yon that started here, whose conversations were here, whose equipment and books and technology was this entities. And they building up elsewhere. We're not crazy. Some people not gonna come to this because it's the go around. Doesn't mean we don't believe that you are sincere in your effort, but we also know what you're working with. And what we got to work against.
Thank you.
The other question I have is if the board doesn't have to approve it by act of vote. And I'm just curious about the interjection of the Michigan Department of Ed in between duly elected board members and their employee. Because as Jeanette pointed out, if there's a disagreement, who is the final call? And what's the consequence on the district? Because that's what's happened before. So maybe that needs to be clear so the public can know what to expect if it comes to that. Doesn't mean that people don't like each other, but there can be a difference. There can be wonderful solutions, but there can be a difference about outcomes. So but this interjection between the school board's employee and our duly elected officials, I'm not sure about that. What's that about?
Okay. Can I answer?
Yes, please, I'm waiting.
Okay, all right. So this is an agreement. The board has been notified and shared information and understands what the agreement includes, all the different components of what's being asked for. The board president is the person. Okay, the board president is the person who's responsible for, in terms when we say a signature, in terms of, do we have the full board agreement in terms of signing this agreement? You have to have the agreement because you were identified. The ESSA, the federal laws, the state laws, we're charged as a department, MDE is charged. We have to account and say, what is it and how are we doing in terms of supporting our lowest performing schools? This isn't about anything else other than we all have to get better in this. We cannot sit and just say we have low performing schools and walk away. MDE has a responsibility. So per our federal laws, per our state laws, we have to be able to say that we are doing something that would help to support. The partnership agreement is that something, but the partnership agreement is driven by helping you to identify and meet your needs. And we've already talked about your strategic plan. The community spent a lot of time working on that, identifying that. Then you were identified as a partnership district. And once you were identified as a partnership district, we took the work that you had already done because we value that work. And we looked at what would be next steps. We went through again, the MyKIP process, data story. What is the story behind Benton Harbor area schools? And so perfect to add those statements regarding that, embedding that piece in it. But also now that we have that, what are going to be the next steps in terms of moving forward? As a board, as a state, we're all responsible for academic outcomes for kids. And that's what this is about. That's the only thing that this is about. And so moving forward, we're asking the goals that were identified. If we're all in agreement with those goals and moving forward with this, what would be the next steps needed so that we can begin the implementation of that? And it's around literacy, math, and the social emotional learning for students. 3 critical areas.
And I appreciate that. And then finally, my last comment, and I'd like to hear, see, I think it's from an organizational improvement, I think it's BS to have them have to fill out applications. There should be a process, given the state of the school and its identification on this list. They should have priority access to funds that everybody knows is going to help. His work should not be tied up filling out application. Her work over there should not be tied up doing paperwork because they run in the schools. They need priority access. They need early identification to funding resources and technical expertise as they think about how, I mean, we got 2 sides about boilers. If they really want to help, take care of them boilers. We get windows that need to be replaced. If they really want to help, people ask, people with money say, we're going to help. Where do you want it? So if the priority are this school and other schools on their list, do not tie them up with paperwork. Let them do the jobs that they're skilled to do and give them the financial resource, because talk is a lot of things. We can shift this paper all around. Give them the financial resources, priority access, because the #1 school and whatever number we are should not be in the same pot for all of the money that's available. They need priority access.
Let me just address that last issue. So we don't want to tie any of our districts up in paperwork. And that's the reason why you have a liaison assigned to your district. The liaison is assigned, and that liaison, unless they take a different job or something, the goal is they will be with you for the duration of this partnership agreement. And so the goal is to work with the superintendent to find out what's needed, And when we talk about applications, it's about the application, but we still have to get direction from the superintendent, which you, the board has hired as the person in charge of your instruction. So I agree. We don't want it, we're not tying them up. Our goal is and has been to remove barriers, identify. Dr. Butts has direct access to us at any point in time. And so again, how do we move this? Because we don't have a lot of time. And the funds that are available, we want to make sure that we're maximizing them. So in maximizing the funds, it's critical that we look at and see what other sources of revenue do you currently have? How could you utilize the 21H funds? What would work best? Come back to the board. What does this look like in terms of can you move something around? Where does this look? Where's the alignment between this? So it is not to take anything away from your district. Really, I do understand. I see the passion. I hear the passion in your voice. I've heard your trustee triplet. So yes, we're all eager to get to that same place. And the reason why we're all here and doing the work, I don't think you'll find any more passionate people than you find that we work with, because everyone is working on the same thing. We have a crisis, and how do we get better at getting out of this? Because we don't want to come back and have the same discussion. I think that's where everyone is here about, because you're talking about what has happened in the past.
Vice President Bowens.
I'm listening to you talk more and more, and you're saying MDE cannot allow our kids that you guys assume are failing and everything, you guys can't tolerate it. But when you look at the data, and the data will show that things got worse when MDE got involved in the district. So my question is, when you're a bargain shopper, you either craft or great value, for example. And what I'm hearing constantly is that we're being sold or told that this is the only option, or this is what we need. And you guys are going to give us an assistant. And, years ago we had, I think her name was Cindy LeGros. She was an assistant. Things still have not gotten better with some of these same entities, is what they're saying. And we're still working with them. What is MDE? And my next question, I'm going to just make me a statement, but my next statement is, this is a new partnership agreement. No other school districts have this, correct? Or is this a new proposal or rollout approach that the state is taking, correct?
So the lowest 5% of schools
I
that were
get that.
identified, all of them are finalizing their partnership agreements right now. All of them
Okay,
have
so
to have a partnership.
I understand that.
agreement.
I
Yeah.
understand accountability in the partnership agreement. My question was, is this a new approach?
No, this is round 4 of partnership agreements. So what we have, it looks very different than what we had originally in terms of that, because as we get better and work on things, we want to make sure that the power lies with you and that we really do a better job of aligning those resources.
So since this is not a new approach, thank you for that. How many schools have been successful with this approach that you guys have implemented?
We had 26 that were removed from partnership district just this last round.
Okay. And
But-
it's
Okay,
big growth or small growth? Like if you're not at 5%, but you're at 6%, how's that?
some did. But what they have are the system and things in place. So for some of our larger districts, it might be that they had districts or schools removed. But in the removal of those schools, other schools were re-identified, but that's just because it's such a large district. But they had the systems in place. And so what we should see is that more and more of those schools will be removed as we move forward.
We need you to speak into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I know you're presenting to us, but we record, and then there's individuals that are tuning in live. So we want to make sure that they're able to hear the information as well. Vice President Bowens, was there another question?
I just wonder, so why now are we going through this approach if it's been here for so long?
It's not that it's been here so long in this approach. We've done research with EPIC, Michigan State University. And our approach has shown something that is working in terms of partnering with districts. And the whole goal was not coming down with a heavy hammer, but actually putting and leaving you in control. And again, that's why I'm saying, we're not coming in and saying we're closing your schools or we're sending someone to take over and sit in the seats. We're saying, what are the supports? And so it is an alignment of those supports, identifying the systems and things that you need, if that's what you need, in terms of moving the district forward. So we need to hear from you in terms of what is it? Where are you on this scale as you look at your district overall? What are your needs? What is it that we need to do? And so that's why I started at the beginning when I talked about the strategic plan. You went through that work, and that's not easy work to go through, but you went through it in terms of trying to identify where are those gaps and what do we need in terms of moving the needle.
So does any of those schools that have succeeded off of the partnership agreement demographics look similar to Benton Harbor's?
Absolutely.
Can you name some?
Detroit Public Schools.
Okay.
Detroit Public Schools. So we have big ones, we have little ones, but Detroit is a huge district. And that was one that I'm talking about, even though they had a lot of schools removed, they still had some new ones that came on board, but they have the systems. And so it's just that now those systems have to spread out even further, but you've already got 26 of your schools that are doing phenomenally well.
So do you understand the level of distrust? Because you're telling us that this approach has been here, but just 2 years or 3 years ago, the approach was shut the high school down and, it was more penalizing.
Right.
And
So,
now we're being told this approach, and that's a level of mistrust.
so I would say, I would answer this question this way. We understand, we heard that penalizing doesn't work. It's much like when you have a child, you don't, when you're trying to spank and do all those things, that's probably not the best approach. But when you turn it around and you allow people to control and work within their districts, and then you come in and you say, how can we help? Because that was what we heard. That was our takeaway. It was not about coming in, closing down schools. It really was about take a look at what we already have done. Look at who we are, understand the history behind our district, and understand what it will take to move forward. So when you think about MDE, you say, okay, so you've got money, you got supports, but we're not seeing those supports here in the community. We're not feeling that support. What we're hearing is feeling is more mandate. So this partnership agreement revised so that it allows you to have that support, to have that control, to value again the work and things that you've already done, and to look to see what it is and how not just MDE, but the ISD was mentioned. How can the ISD play an integral part in working with Benton Harbor area schools? How can they play an integral part in helping to support? So it really is, and I would have to ask you to the trust piece. I understand that that's huge because people, when they feel that things aren't what they appear to be, people want to back off. But I'm going to ask you in this instance to have some trust. Dr. Butts is going to provide information. He's going to provide frequent updates as to how we're going. The board meetings will have all the information that they need. You will see the data because you already see the data through your monthly board meetings in terms of what's happening, what's not. The partnership agreement portion of that is just a more focused attempt to make sure that those things are in place. So if you ask the ISD or if you ask MDE and you say, well, I need ed consultants to come out and help support our reading coaches. The ed consultants from the ISD have been in place. They've been attending the meetings. So you should be able to see some of that when you talk about being within the building. Dr. Butts should be able to see evidence of that. That evidence should be very clearly and visible throughout your district as we move forward. But the agreement, we have to do something. We cannot, by law, we have to, federal guidelines say, we have to identify what it is. This is what we have, the partnership agreement. There, again, nothing in there about closure. It is all about academic outcomes. What does that look like and how do we move the needle forward?
Thank you. Are there
President
any-
Robbins, oh, go ahead.
You have the floor.
Thank you, for all of the update and clarity. I appreciated a lot of the questions. I attended a few meetings and, one major struggle that I've had, is that, and I think Mrs. Triplett pointed it out, that this agreement didn't require a board vote. And being in a democracy and actually being a part of a public school district that's governed by 7 people here in Benton Harbor, I struggle with that because one board member don't have any more power than the other, but they chair the meeting. And so we have a president that chairs our meetings. And so it's nothing against our president or anything. It's just I guess I think what's not being said is that there has been some institutional racism, discrimination from MDE. We were given a CEO some years ago, and I know, we have to definitely grow from our past, but as we think about the word trust that you use in developing that partnership has to be two-way, right? And so we were given a CEO that continued to dismantle our district and some of the systems that we had in place due to our democracy or lack thereof, right? So I just wondered, did anyone else think about that? Or that might be something that you can take back to the team to let them know that that is a concern, if it's not of any other district, but of Benton Harbor, because there is a level of disrespect to say that you don't need the governing body to approve a partnership. But then when something happens, we're going to be responsible for ensuring that the partnership is followed through. So we might have a superintendent that gets another job, right? Or we might not be elected officials anymore because our terms will be up within this 3 years. And so, how do you kind of merge those two so that we can do what you said, which is have a partnership two-way and then build trust, trusting that, the intentions are
Right,
pure.
yeah.
Mhm.
We're not going to build trust today. in this
Right.
moment.
Mhm.
Right. We're not, and I'm not going to even try to
Mhm.
do that. But I think it's in small steps.
Mhm.
It's in small steps that we take. And again, not to erase what has happened, your story for Benton Harbor area schools, there's a lot.
Mhm.
There's a lot. So again, how do we can't go back and erase that. But I think at some point you do, as a collective body, as a community, you have to be able to move forward. And what will that look like? The
So-
next
oh,
step.
go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, so the next steps, this is, I can't say it any other way. It's not a power grab. It's not a power grab. There's nothing for us to gain
Mhm.
by trying to take away a district. I know personally, when a school closes down, what that looks like, what that feels like. And all of us want to look out the door and see your child walk down to the corner school. You want to be able to walk down there. So the trust piece, that's something it's going to take time. We're not going to get there today. We're not going to get there tomorrow. I think this is the first step, though. This is a partnership agreement. I think working in unity to really understand how we can all work on this together. There's nothing in here that's to harm, to hurt, to take away from your power. You're driving the boat on this. And so much to the question about, if someone doesn't agree on something, then maybe the one that we chose is not the right one. Maybe we have to look at another one, another accountability measure. that's listed. So there are options within this. But as part of that is to come back to the board and say, hey, this is where we are. What are next steps? But we have to have one of these. And I think we're getting way ahead of the game because right now, where we are, we just need to really focus in on what's going to happen in terms of how do we get started. The ISD is ready. MDE is ready. You have your team, your leadership team, they're ready. We just need to go ahead to say that, yeah, we're ready to start moving forward. We're going to take this, we're going to work with it. Again, there's nothing in this agreement. Read it over. You'll have the draft available. Read it over, review it. We're not trying to make a decision today. What I really want is for people to understand that we have to do something.
Mhm.
And the do something has everyone sitting at the table and being thoroughly invested in what needs to happen next.
My follow-up, so my second, thing, so, did, MDE identify Berrien Reso or the ISD as a partner? Or is that a requirement?
The ISD is required, yes.
And so I think, and maybe I didn't explain this, or when I was rambling, I think that's one big elephant in the room here in Benton Harbor. At one point, I think in 2015, the ISD, I know Mrs. Stripley mentioned, non-compete, clause. In 2015, they were pretty much managing our finances, our HR, many parts of our special education department and also curriculum department. And so in that, our district was pretty much dismantled. And so we have not, I know in the normal district, I've worked in some districts, the ISD is like a grandparent, if you will. And so over the last couple of years that I've been around as a board member, 2.5 years, there's not been a lot of parenting or partnerships going on with this, with the ISD. And so I think, due to some of the trauma, right? We have to move on and we know that, but how do you move on with a person that has abused you without any kind of transition? And I think that's the difficult piece. Even being in the room at that partnership planning meeting, it was a little awkward and they're new faces, right? But it's a little awkward because there hasn't been any kind of dialogue or conversation about kind of where we were and where we are. And I know that we have to move on, and I'm with you, right? But I think that's the elephant. Like, how do you do that in that space of awkwardness now that you have this agreement that's mandated by the state? And now, it's like your parents telling you, you got to figure it out and get along.
So, thank you for that.
Mhm.
that historical.
Yeah. Right.
But I think we have to start somewhere.
Mhm.
And thank you, because the elephant in the room needs to be addressed. And so that's a conversation that has to take place between the board members and the ISD. They're kind of like, okay, so what is it? This is what we're working on under this partnership agreement. This is our 5-year strategic plan here. What is it that we're going to do, and how do we address it? How do we, I'm going to use the word forgiveness, but how do we forgive and then now take this and sit at the table and be able to talk about things that, hey, this didn't go well. We've got this curriculum. I don't think that the teachers are really understanding it. Dr. Butts is saying that it's not something that's working, or we're not getting enough support. So we have to be willing to have the difficult conversation. And I think that's all part of it. So the partnership agreement, when I think about it, totality, that piece of it, being able to have those difficult conversations, you're going to have them, absolutely. Because I think that that's a piece in terms of being able to move this forward.
Thank you.
There's a question from the public. I'll allow Mr. We'll go with, you can come. I think you wanted to ask the question before, then we'll go with Mr. Hoy. You have to come to the mic, though. Please identify yourself and then state your question.
I just sign off of this comment that was just made. I would just like to emphasize, forgiveness may not be the thing that should happen, but saying what you can expect different from that entity that has caused harm, that's a different side of the conversation. It can't always be on this community to give everything. Convince us of their intent by telling us what will be different.
Thank you can I just address that real quick?
So it really would be helpful in the meeting if you all would allow me to give you the mic before speaking, but you can go ahead and respond and then we'll go to her question.
So thank you. That's a great point. Because I think in coming to the table, they're coming to the table, and when I say they, the ISD is coming to the table and saying, this is going to be our commitment. And so they are taking that initial step. They have been in all the meetings because they are saying, this is what we want to listen, we want to hear, so that we can know what it is that we can do that will be different and provide that support. So the ISD, yeah, they're on board in terms of, but I can understand what you were saying about the whole piece about feeling uncomfortable in the room and that level of distrust. So I think what we have to do is come together and at some point be able to see what are the visible things that you can see the evidence of the changes and how that support looks. And so I think we have to be willing to just give everyone an opportunity to be able to demonstrate. And if there's not evidence, then we need to say, what is it that we're not getting? And how do we go about, because right now we're feeling, this is the way we feel about this right now, that the progress or the support that was promised is not being provided. But right now they're holding themselves accountable for various things. They're in it. And so I would like for all of us to be able to give them an opportunity, as well as to show, as well as all of us being in there to see, is this really working? Okay.
Okay, you have the floor for your question.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, my name is Deidre Fields. Do I direct you guys? I just want to have the mic be able to hear me, but my question is.
So you can speak into the mic with your question and then whoever is relevant to can answer.
Okay, and I was actually originally online, but I had to pull up so that I can actually ask a question. And, you have a very great voice and, have a way of expressing yourself where we don't necessarily feel combative, right? And it was almost so relaxing that I was almost sold to an extent, right? If you understand where I'm coming from, and then listening to Miss Triplet, it was like, okay, I need to come. But as a result, I have so many questions. First of all, we are here to give feedback on something we haven't seen, right? That we don't particularly know about, and I'm not understanding from the question from the board if you guys do either, right? And with the history that we're all talking about or referencing, yet it's okay, we have researched you, we understand, the trauma, we understand the different things, but oh, we didn't know that. Or even if you're referring to a previous staff member that took part in it last time. So how much history, I mean, and we're not Detroit. We're not Detroit or we're not other entities. And so what does our plan look like, right? And so I was trying to follow it online. I'm not understanding who all was present for the partnership. I understand we were identified, and from there, this is a partnership without power, basically, to an extent, right? So it's not an option to have a partnership, or is it?
No, you are.
Can you please speak into the mic?
Based on the school index identification, you're identified as a partnership district.
I heard.
Right, okay, and so you have to,
Have to.
I
love you kept referencing partnerships, but we
well,
have these different requirements, and some things weren't understood as a
So-
requirement or not. So I'm just trying to
Right.
ask questions and
no,
not
you're
having all the
fine,
information.
you're fine.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
I want to be clear, right? So the partnership agreement is what our way of identification and how we're going to support. We have 51 districts throughout the state of Michigan. I don't know the total number of schools, I'm not sorry, the total number of students that this impacts. But we have to be able to have some sort of systematic way that we're approaching this. So I heard the ISD. We need more support from the ISD. Within the partnership agreement, ISD is asked not just for Benton Harbor, but for all of the districts to play an integral part of what they're going to provide to our districts. Because it's all, and I said this before, it's all about the academic outcomes. Go ahead.
Right, and so these. so
Before
another-
you continue, you had a
Yeah.
comment indicating you weren't sure if we were aware of the agreement, but majority of the board, I think maybe one person, some individuals met a part of the committee with them,
Mhm.
stood in my place or came into the meetings. Some of us have had an opportunity to get some clarification from Dr. Butts. The reason that we're here is because we had not had an opportunity to do it as a full board discussing it with the Michigan Department of Education. So each of the board members have been privy to the document and been in meetings and had an opportunity to get clarification. But this is our first time as a full board doing that. So I just wanted to respond to that question, but then you can continue with the next one that you had.
I'm sorry, can I just?
I'm gonna forget my.
Yes.
In terms of, because I think that was one of your other questions about the draft that you haven't seen it. Right.
Right.
Okay, so it's in a draft form. Draft means that it has not been finalized and it won't be finalized. So as soon as we finish with the draft, then the draft will be made available. We don't want you to sign something that obviously nobody does that. But we have to get a draft that's at least something that's a viable product. So what we did is we heard from the board members before about different things and some of their concerns. We took it back, there were some edits and different things, we brought it back and we did it again. So now it's going through its final review. And what we think is a good product in terms of a partnership agreement that addresses the need based on what Benton Harbor has identified as being the needs that they want, or a needs that they have to do. That's one.
Okay, and so with that in mind, right, so we decided, is what I heard via Zoom, of our partners, even though our partners are our competition. So we chose our community, are the partners. So for example, the competing school districts, we chose them as partners in this process.
So the partners aren't competing school districts, and that wasn't necessarily a given. That was something that Ms. Triplett was indicating she wanted us to be conscious of in our development of who the partners were. So our partners are not necessarily other school districts, but the ISD is, which is Berry and Risa, is standard in being a part of it, and they're the umbrella with all the districts, but there's not an identified partner that's another competing school district per se.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and then after this draft, so the revisions such as the trauma that Treasurer Creighton referenced, Gavin, as well as Mrs. Triplett, that you said would not necessarily be stated anywhere aside from just our backstory, which I would think it should already be known, right? If there was research done to understand us and how the systematic racism and different things have been in place to get us here, it should already more or less almost been stated somewhere to make it real in regards to, I know we are talking about people coming to the table and basically being honest and taking ownership of things. It should be in black and white. You know, it's like you were referenced as a grandparent, but that was your grandparent that did that. So we shouldn't have to ask or beg to be treated fairly. They should almost come to the table and say,
So,
and
right.
before forgiveness should almost, that's a whole nother conversation, but that would be nice because I think that puts us in a better position if everybody being honest about where we are in regards to them getting our kids and different things of that nature, which is how we have less funding and different things of that nature. So we do know how that comes about is when they go other places and things of that nature and systematic processes, basically.
So I wanted to address.
That's how I felt. No, because everything she brought up was really good. So what is
Okay,
it?
yeah, Micah, right, thank you. Okay. The Micah data story. Again, MDE does not control your data story. That's the story that you put together in terms of who you are, where you stand. You are and you tell your own story. And so it's not an issue to put that in the end, like that, because you're right. It does reflect and tell more about and identify who we are, who and where we were at a certain point when all of these other things came in and how that this impacted our district. And it needs to be there. You're absolutely right. So the life story will be embedded. We'll be able to do that. Thank you. Yeah. But all of those things are key pieces. So again, this is not to take away from anything about who you are. Our sole interest in this, how do we get to the next step? How do we get your kids up and reading? And I don't want to say your kids because they're mine too. You know, they belong to all of us. How do we get the students reading? How do we ensure that they have the math skills that they need? There's nothing more in there, you know, and I can't say that enough. I know that you're feeling anxiety and angst. And in the video, that's what most of the other partnership schools said, there was a lot of anxiety. Nobody wants to be a partnership district. It's another label that someone is putting on us.
They
And
can't
the
hear
end
you.
result,
And the end result was, for those who were finally released, some of them didn't want to go. They said it was tough. We had to have some difficult conversations because we had to take a look at who we are, where we've been, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. So you're going to have to go through all of that. This is not, it's a partnership agreement, but it's a lot of that underlying work that you're going to have to go through in order to get to where we get to what it is that we desire. I don't think there's anyone here in this room that's not sitting here because they're not interested in academic success for all of our students. And so that being said, we have to start somewhere. And I'm going to be here. I live on the other side of the state, you know, but I'm committed. I'm committed to being here. You know, Dr. Butts called and he said, you know, can you come? And it wasn't a question of, can I come? It's what time do I have to be there? So I'm going to be here. But I need for all of you in the room to commit to being here as well, to have the difficult conversations, to say when you want to say, I don't like what you're saying, I don't agree with it. We can't be offended by that. Because at the end of the day, we got to work through this. We got to get past this. And we have to get to seeing our babies graduating from high school, going on to next steps. And I'm not saying that you don't have students already graduating, but I want it said that that students had an opportunity, and it wasn't for a lack of opportunity, that they couldn't become the doctor or whatever it was they chose in life to be. We owe it to them. So we have to start somewhere. This meeting tonight, it's a lot of tension here, but we're going to get through this. But we're all committed in doing the work. And I think that has to be our primary focus. And so, Ms. Triplett, you're going to be responsible because you're going to bring, whenever you come to the meeting, I know you're going to have your book and your notes, and you're going to dig. And those are the things that you have to do.
She's probably going to call me after the meeting. So,
Right. But you have to dig. And we have you sitting, I forgot your name. Marvin, right. Marvin over here waiting patiently, right. Yeah, he's gonna close out, right.
and we
So-
do want to make sure that we can give everyone an opportunity
Right.
to get their questions in, as well as allow her to be able to leave at a reasonable time to get back to the other side of the state. So I'm not sure if you had additional questions, but we do want to try to get to everybody. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so, again, why I stated that I wasn't sure if everybody, knew everything and what the partnership process where who you guys, they decided whether you brought it back or someone spoke in your absence in regards to this partnership, and then that, what is that acronym for our backstory again?
Yeah.
Mike.
The data.
So who all took part in that, right? And then if you guys as a board had the opportunity to ask the other districts, I don't know that we know, being that Trent asks who else are in this state or in this crisis, basically, right? What were their experiences? So like, have you asked for that data and have you been able to look over it? Have you had any engagement with anybody that has been through this before or plan to?
Madam President.
You have the floor.
And I'm glad that you kind of asked something today, that I asked at one of the planning meetings. And I think, one thing that never came out is that we can, from my understanding, make revisions to this agreement. The only thing that we cannot make are revisions to our goals, right? So the destination, which our goals are, like she said, the ELA or literacy, math, and then SEL, social emotional learning, those things won't change. So we know that's where we have to go. But the roadmap on how to get there, we can change and make revisions. And so that gave me some sense of relief and comfort, knowing that we don't have to have it all figured out today or on Monday, right? But that we know that we have to improve in literacy, in math, and in social emotional learning, which are some of the things that we feel every day, right? So that gave me a little comfort in knowing that, in 6 months, we realized that, this is not working and we need, ISD to do X, Y, and Z, or we need, MDE to do X, Y, and Z. And we have the flexibility, from my understanding, to come back to the table and say, we need more support in this area, and less support over here. So
MICIP stands for Continuous Improvement Planning. So it's an ongoing thing. The agreement is just your overall guideline, just your focus areas for what we're doing. But we're continuously coming back and saying, is this working? Is it enough? What else do we need? Or, you might identify and say, we don't need this, but we would rather have this type of support. So we don't want to continue with something that you don't need. What we want to know is what's missing. What are those pieces that are missing? And equally, what's missing as well as what's working, because whatever is working, we got to do more of that. And we've got to utilize that, because those things are just as important as the things that we haven't identified.
Okay, so again, have you guys had any engagement with anybody that has been through this process? Trent asked, Vice President Bowens asked who were other people that have been through this, right? Through the program or whatnot. So where is the data from that?
So you can actually go on the OPD website through MDE. You can see all the previous schools that were identified as that had partnership agreements. All the partnership agreements, once they are finalized and have been signed, they will be posted on the OPD website. So everybody across the state can see, you can look and see what other people wrote in theirs and compare. You're also free to contact, I think we had Pontiac, trying to think of the other districts that were up there. We had a public, a PSA, and we had E-Course.
E-Course.
Right, thank you. We had E-Course. So you're free to contact other districts and say, tell me your experience. How was this? You're free. I mean, that's what, I would say, go talk to other districts and find out. The video was just an opportunity to give you a snapshot. And the goal is to continue to give you snapshots throughout the course of this agreement so that you can hear from different people. I want to come to the west side of the state next time and talk to people. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll stop so that other people can get time. Believe it or not, I know when to stop. No, inside joke. But in all seriousness, I just really wanted you guys or in turn support and encourage you guys to be active in it, right? To ask questions, as more questions as you need to, so that you're able to do your advocacy in whatever way that looks. And so looking into those things, because like I told you, she has a wonderful voice, and it was like, oh, it's just a partnership. It's just a partnership. And it's like, okay, but did we decide upon this partnership or are we, basically following the lead? And so, or fell into it to an extent, right? And so, but help is help, right? But knowing when you're able to exit things or when you're able to pivot are all crucial, right? I understand we shouldn't even really change our focal points. We know the reading, literacy, math, all those things are vital, but when and how integrated or involved will the community be able to be in this process, right? What does those evaluations look like? So you have a curriculum or a criteria for evaluations, being that, which is a whole other thing where it's like, oh, we only have a little bit of time, but trust takes time. I mean, all those things are like circling in my head, but what does those markers look like?
Right.
And then I'm gonna sit down. So that
Okay.
I won't-
And so I want to restate it because you said it again as far as what you want to encourage us to ask questions. And I want to assure you that in those meetings, whether it was the full committee or the meetings with Dr. Buss looking at the draft, each member of the board has had an opportunity to look at the draft, express concerns. You know, the type of individuals we are, we're not light spoken at all. So there were feedback and things that members of the board had an opportunity to express concerns to Dr. Buss about some of the language, which has been mentioned here today, but also give that feedback to the larger community committee meetings as well. So we have been a part of this process, whether it's through curriculum committee meeting, which is myself, Gavin, and Triplet, in individual one-on-ones with Dr. Buss, or whether it's two of us with Dr. Buss or the full committee that includes the ISD, we have been active in this process. This is, again, like I said, just the first time that we have a full board have had an opportunity to ask her questions with all of us lined at the table. So I didn't want you to think that we were not a part of this process.
So
President Robbins.
Yes.
Oh, and I wanted to just support that a little bit. And I think this is not our first time. My first time going to the meeting, I think it was like 12 outcomes, and I was freaking out, right? Like how you are. And so we're a little quiet, not because we're confused or we don't have, we have pretty much dissected this document and chopped it up. And I think the biggest, like I said, struggle that I was having was with the elephants that, are in the room, in our area, from whatever trauma. And so, but we did start with 12 outcomes and we're down to like 3 now. And so those things keeps us from, because basically this document is saying, whatever you saying here, you have to do. And so we were putting things in here. And my example I gave in the meeting was, I'm going to wear a blue jacket, right? That wasn't in there. That was my example. So if we put in here that we're going to wear a blue jacket every day when we're teaching, and then when it's time to measure the outcome and they do an observation, they said, well, I didn't see anyone with a blue jacket. So it was no teacher in the room, right? Because in here you say your teachers are going to wear blue jackets. And so one of the major things that I think that we did was we generalized our outcomes so that we'll have the flexibility to make changes as needed, right? When it's hot outside, you might didn't see a teacher in a blue jacket because it was hot, right? And so we definitely chopped it up. I am comfortable, right, with not necessarily like super excited because it's an agreement and we're signing it, and we're agreeing to it, right? So there is some commitment issues and anxiety. However, I feel like what we have put in here so far, we can definitely live with. If everything that is done, that's on this paper and there's no fine print, I think we'll be fine. I think it's the other intentions that we struggle with because of that past trauma and distrust. And so we have done a lot of work. We started off, we have a very ambitious chief of academics. And she had a bunch of stuff in here because she is a teacher and she wanted to make sure she had lots of ideas, right? And so as much as we love the ambition, we decided to put those things on the other side so that we can be aware of, this is how we're going to get there, right? This is one way, one road or path that we're going to take to get there. But if we put it in here and then we decide that we don't need to do that anymore, then we can change it. And so I do feel, comfortable, and that's just me, with the things. We've dissected it, we've gone through it, we've changed the goals, we've changed the language. This is just that last time
That
that
last run through.
Yep,
That's what
trustee
that was.
Gavin said, let's all get together so that we can hear the things that you're saying, that Mrs. Triplett is saying, that, Miss Jeanette is going to, has said, and some others may say. And so, when she said it, it definitely gave me some reassurance that, maybe you should go ahead and address or mention the elephant when you said some things. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Honestly, I didn't have the time to come, but I moved some stuff around so that I can make sure that I am here to show support, because I was very involved in that process. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to following through the partnership part of it without a hidden agenda. That's my hope. Yeah.
Okay, I do have one final question
Is
So-
the question to the board or is it to her? Because
to her.
okay, go ahead. And then we really have to give Mr. Hoy an opportunity. You have the floor.
Okay, so again, we're referencing ISD and just loosely, right? The ISD. So are you guys going to be able to have those type of conversations with? Have you had that kind of conversation in regards to the history? So when you had meetings to decide on what would be in this partnership and things of that nature, and they were in the room, right? So did you reference the things you're referencing now with the people that were in the room?
So the thing about it is, we as a board can have a conversation with the ISD at any point that we would like to, regardless of whether it's in this pertaining to this or just in general to get that out. We can, and I understand you're saying having that bigger conversation is something that we can do.
No, because I thought maybe, I told you that your voice was like, we're compartmentalizing, we're taking all these different things in. Are you going to support or, have, because we're always told to just, okay, move on. We're not talking about what happened. And at the end of the day, even in school, you can't do work and not consider what happened. Like when you're reading stories, what happened first, second, third, all those different things. History matters, right? And so I'm just wondering, because we can do this partnership and then it's still compromised to an extent, right? Then what? So again, that's just my question. Maybe you guys don't have a better answer other than we went when Madam President wasn't able to go, somebody else went. And again, I don't know what this consisted of. So that's probably why I can't.
I guess I'm
visualize
a little
what the-
bit puzzled by what you mean by a better answer as relates to our participation. Like there, yeah, that
Okay, can I-
I'm not really, or maybe that's a conversation for you and I after the meeting.
No, because when we are referencing like the different things that has happened,
Mhm.
right? And like, Treasurer Creighton brought up, the trauma when we were in these different, and again, I don't know what they look like again, right? So from what you said, that it was small groups, larger groups, all of that. Did we have that conversation as to basically like, in a situation because of your part in it to an extent, just being honest and being able to have that conversation in a professional setting and being honest. You're the board president of our community. And so you'll be within rights to say that
Mhm.
and to have that conversation. That's the safest space to have it in regards to being honest and helping and supporting us of moving forward. So did it happen at any of the interactions that I'm not maybe?
So the meetings that we had were specifically regarding the drafts and the things that we were working on as it relates to this, and having a greater conversation about the ISD's past traumas that have taken place. That's not a conversation that took place within working on this particular draft. But what I indicated is that the individual that I am not going to approach a conversation until this board and this body says, this is a conversation that we are ready to have. And so in us going through and discussing this and through development of this draft, we do realize, even though, like we've been honest with our concerns with MDE because they're present, that is a conversation that I am comfortable with us initiating, so that as we're going through this partnership agreement, it can be clear that we're aware of what that history is, just like they are. We've had conversations on other situations that I can't really go into, that are financial circumstances where we've had to stand up and hold them accountable for things that have happened in the past. So it's not as though the district has never said, this is something that you've done wrong to us, and this is what that history is. That's something that's very clear. But if we want to sit down and have a lemon squeeze, for a lack of a better word, as a district with the ISD, that's something that we can do, as long as the board is saying that's a conversation that they want to have.
President Robinson, I was asking to speak probably 30 minutes ago.
Well, thank you
About
for your
30 minutes.
comments and your conversation. I'm going to go ahead and ask that you allow the next party.
President Robinson.
You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful that the community came out and spoke exactly what's been on my mind and heart. And it's likened to a child getting shot in the leg, and then everyone coming in and saying, why are you so slow in the race? Why are you the last one to cross to cross the finish line? And then instead of the ones who shot the child in the leg admitting that they shot that child in the leg, telling everybody that that's the slowest child in the race. Our district was fine before the state stepped in and before ISD stepped in. And now we're being asked to go into a partnership agreement without anything in the agreement assigning a responsibility or an acknowledgement from the state and the ISD. And so my question is, or my recommendation is, there are sections in this partnership agreement that say MDE's actions will be, ISD's actions will be. And I think that instead of just conversations, there needs to be tangible, a racial equity self-assessment of their historic role in the pain and the harm that they've caused, right? That's how you build trust. You have to actually admit what you've done to the people and not just, say, well, y'all the lowest performing school. Well, why? Right? What have you done? You forced us to get rid of our staff. What would you expect? Right? So it's not anything against the people who are present today. We're not saying that these are bad people, but what we are saying is that you're still wearing that name, and you're saying you're putting the label on us, but you're not attaching any type of label to yourself. And so what I would recommend is that in this partnership agreement, that in the sections that says what MDE will do, that they will take responsibility and do a racial equity self-assessment of, their impact or their role in where we are, and that ISD should do the same. While we're giving all our teachers and administrators and all these other people extra work, everybody should be doing some extra work to make sure that we're doing right by our kids. And then if the district and if the state is saying that they're not going to close us, I think that they should also say that explicitly, that in writing, that MDE will not require closure of Benton Harbor area schools. I mean, it's nice, but we've seen great people start the work and then those people be transferred out, and then somebody else come in who doesn't have that same disposition. And so I think that for us, it would be helpful for us to have those things in writing, and that responsibility be passed around to everybody.
Thanks, Trustee Gavin. You have the floor, Mr. Hoy.
Thank you, Michael Hoy. What I'm really gathering here is also called the squeeze of the lemon that you just spoke of. I'm having flashbacks when the governor came here, Pastor Atterbury's church. She came in with a listening. She said it was going to be a listening tour or whatever. She came in with a plan. When you go to a meeting, you come in with 2 blank pieces of paper and you both sit there and you negotiate your work together. as a plan. I think what would be great, and I really agree with Elnora Gavin in this one, and I'm just rooting for you here because I think what needs to happen is an addendum or a another attachment to this, asking for ISD, MED, and lay out the role that they play, that this history is not going to replace itself. And it's not to hold them accountable, but let's just clear the bases here. Okay, let's just clear the bases. All right. And the dismantling, I mean, my mother was in the school system for 28 years. She saw this coming. Okay, let's clear the bases and let's really, again, hold the feet to the fire at this point, and then let's work together after this. But there hasn't been, from what I'm hearing from everybody here, you know, you said there was going to be a data dump or the ambassador or whatever. No, there has to be accountability at the state level of what took place here. Okay, and their guidelines that they're not going to repeat. They're asking for a partnership on our part to, you know, with our guidelines. But if this is supposed to be a draft and a proposal, and it has to go both ways. And let's clean up those hard conversations that may have taken place behind the scenes. Let's bring it together with an addendum or something else, attachment to this, and says, this is the role that took place. And this is our participation. We're going to support that. It's not going to happen again, and go forward with that, because we really need to clean this up, because that's the gorilla in the room. That's the elephant in the room. That's the tiger in the room too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one last comment. I think we've gotten just about everybody, and then we'll proceed with our agenda.
It has been a long evening. And one of the things I've learned about
You
long
have to-
evenings.
I know that we're familiar with you, but we do need you to state.
All right, my name is
sir.
Marvin Haywood.
Thank you.
And when it comes to this, I had talked to Gloria and I, expressed my concern with her prior to her coming down. But when we deal with this situation with this district, we have to deal with reality. We have to deal with facts. Okay, the first thing, how did we get here? I've been following this for 20 years. When we was $1 million in debt, and we went and said, can we get $1 million? He said, why would I put $1 million into a sinking horse? That's what was told to me. And I announced it on my radio show because I went to corporate world. They told me to my face, why would we put $1 million into a sinking horse? This was when we was $1 million in debt. $1 million in debt. Then they wouldn't put no money up. So the people that we have been dealing with over the years, Barry and Risa, ISD, and all of those other entities, when you begin to outsource this district, it was because it was about the takeover of this district. I found the map and this high school was gone. Me and Ms. Kanara found the map. This was all gone because this was going to be a gated community. So we have to deal with the facts of this situation. And a lot of times they want to just erase it and push it up on the rug. When you talk about Benton Harbor, everything that was in this district, we had the skills center, we had the tech center, we had everything that every other school district wanted.
Mr. Haywood,
I know
no.
what you're saying.
Grab the
No,
mic, grab the mic.
I just want to make sure that you utilize this time for question and answer.
And I got
Okay,
you.
okay, go
But
ahead.
I say this because as we sit here today, we have a chance to make this right. We have the funds, we have the resources, but the first thing they have to do is forgive the debt because they created the debt. When you talk about this, you have to do a forensic investigation. I've called Dana about that for years. We have to do a forensic audit and find out how we got in this situation. See, in order to say you're gonna help us, you got to know how we got here. How can you move a car forward if you don't know how the car got there and got stuck? You made a very good point because it's been players in this thing that have strategically, with surgical precision, worked to destroy this district. These kids do deserve an education. They do deserve an education. You have kids that's going out of the district. You have parents that want to bring their kids back. So in order to bring their kids back, in that agreement, it says the superintendent has the authority to reallocate the funds. I saw that in that agreement. So if you say that you have to reallocate the funds to get every building in order that we might bring back the children, that's what you have to do. Because in order to, okay, I'm gonna get to the question because
Thank you. Because you do have, you have
Let me-
another opportunity
I
for
got
an
you.
open public
But when
comment
it
later.
comes to this district, this is serious with me because I've been following this for years. There have been people, when Dr. Sheldon left here, she got rid of a lot of good people. She got rid of a lot of good people, regardless of what y'all say or not. She strategically worked to destroy this district from within and was allowed to do it. You understand me? So we have to be real. You know, when we talk about Benton Harbor, these babies depend on us to make decisions that's in their best interest. That's it. Those are the facts. You know, we have a lot of good people, and I'm not knocking nobody. But when we talk about working in conjunction with, that means you working in conjunction with not what's in the best interest, but what's in the interest of others. There's others that have had plans about this school for years, and we still up against that fight to this day. When you talk about coming in with the MDE, you know, Pearson, all of them, they know when I was at that meeting that they had over at the Boys and Girls Club, they didn't even let me know about it because they didn't want us to really have a voice. And this is what we have to really get away from. And I say that because my question is this, and I just have to state this, man, because I talked to you, Dr. Butts. We had a long discussion. But when we move forward, we have to understand that people have to be on board because this is a strategic plan. It's 5 years. That's a strategic plan, not 3, not 3. A strategic plan is a 5-year plan. If you do anything in 3 years, it can't be strategic because it's not based on facts. It's not based on substance. So, and I say that because we have the resources, the dollars that came down because of COVID to change this district. The people in Lansing working on trying to forget a debt for this school. If this school debt is forgiven, we've been in partnership agreements with Whirlpool and Lakeland. The worst thing could ever happen. The worst thing could ever happen with them benchmarks because they knew they were unachievable. But we had people with marketing money and all kind of stuff, but they never did nothing to market this district. You follow what I'm saying? And so the reason I'm stating this is because I respect you, but I won't, because when we talk about being alumni, it's a rich history right here in this building.
Mr. Haywood, you know you are very near and dear to my
Okay,
heart,
okay,
but I
I'm
need you to
wrap
ask
it up
your
right here.
question
I'm
or
gonna ask this-
maintain your
okay.
comment to open public comment. What was
Okay,
your question
okay.
for Ms.
This is my
Chapman?
question to you, you know, because I can call you and just tell you, but this is my real question to you. When you stand here today, we have to make sure that we look at the real history of what happened in order to move forward. I can't help you if I don't know how you got there. And that's all I'm saying. And a lot of times, like she said, they want to keep pushing up under the rug that they work strategically to destroy this. And they still working. Trust me, they have not went to sleep. They still trying to get this land. My question is this.
Thank you. Because I have said, so Mr. Haywood, what I'm gonna do, we, and I know that sometimes,
and I say
no,
this
one
like this.
second, I know that sometimes when you all are, we value the public significantly, we really do. But I try to make sure that we are
I got you.
sticking to the agenda, and right now is question and answer.
All
So
right, this would be the
ask
question.
your question and
Can we
then we'll
make
have you have a
sure
seat.
That you talk about this being a draft. All right, and I didn't see them make a draft, and when you sign it, next thing you know, they come with some paperwork and you look at it and it's something totally different. See, before you sign something, you have to read it, the final, not the draft. You have to have the final project. And if you're saying it's a revolving door, it cannot be a final project if it's a revolving door. You follow me? Because I've seen them sign and agree to a draft, and when they get the final project, it's some all kind of other stuff in there that they didn't have a clue about. And I'm telling you what I know, because I've seen it so many times. You know, and like I said, I trust that we can make sure that this final agreement is agreed upon and they have the authority to change directions at any given time.
Thank
It's
you,
just
Mr. Haywood.
mandatory.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. They're gonna, when the board, Dr. Butts, the final draft, undergoing the edits that were requested by the board.
Because of the 15th, I'm trying to figure out what is they signing on the 15th too. That's, you say the
Right.
15th, we were coming to an agreement.
The 17th, we,
17th,
right,
too,
right.
okay,
So
yeah.
by law, this agreement, we have to have it done within 90 days. And so April 17th is our 90-day deadline.
what was the reason for the rush to the deadline without getting all the facts? Do you have the facts of how this district has got to the position that it's in right now?
That's going to be included. We already discussed that in terms of what we were going to do to add that additional information into the data, data story, the story of Benton Harbor area schools.
When you talk about that story, what?
Mr. Haywood.
Okay, one more question. See, you say, I'm trying to get you, when you talk about a story,
So the story is,
explain to me when you talk about to the story.
so when speaking of the story, I'm referring to who is Benton Harbor area schools.
And what is our history?
And what is your history? And that's all.
And that's
your
a part of the
that's your
history.
Data story.
Okay.
Okay.
all right, all right.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
right.
That's
Haywood.
what I said at first. We had the skills center, we had the tech center, we
Okay.
had ROTC. we had-
Mr. Haywood.
We had everything for the,
So we're gonna-
when you talk about why kids can't compete, because they took everything away from the district.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Haywood.
you have to bring everything back, CTE and all of that. We need that kind of money to enforce and implement these things which really help the kids. Other than that, the kids know when you're lying.
Mr. Haywood,
All right, thank you.
thank you
ma'am.
so much.
All right.
Madam President.
You have a good day. You have the floor, Treasurer Craig.
So,
Mr. Haywood,
Preacher Haywood.
thank you. You have the floor, Treasurer Craig.
Thank you. So, Mrs. Chapman, I just wonder to kind of support and follow up to what has been said and the concerns addressed. Under the assurance of actions, is it possible for us to add a non-compete clause to the letter C bearing ISD actions to be taken? Is that possible? And then under MDE, are we able to mention something about the financial supports that are being said will be available? Is there something explicitly or bullet that we could explicitly add to that agreement?
Just for clarification, when you say financial supports, are you referring to the 21H funds?
Yes.
Yes, once you're a partnership district, then the funds are available.
Okay.
Okay, but that being said, the funds have to align with what you said, how you're going to use them. And so that's our marker. So you just don't get
Right.
$200,000. We have to know how is this going to support the partnership agreement?
Okay.
Those goals. And those things.
So as far as the ISD, can we add an action in there for a non-compete clause? Are the assurance of actions, can we add to those or are these set by the state?
Those are kind of generic, I'm sorry, those were pretty much generic. So I think what we want to do, why don't we write it and then see if that's something that we can add, right?
All right.
I
So
think we
Dr.
need
Butts,
to draft it,
okay,
just draft it.
like a
and then see.
non-compete clause saying that they can't, once they become a partner, and maybe you can work with the attorney, but just look up some non-compete clauses. They're not taking like obviously programs, staffing, X, Y, and Z, and those are normal things that are in contracts and partnerships. Thank you.
All right, so we have had an extremely robust conversation. I thank you, Ms. Chapman, for being willing to come down and meet with us. And Dr. Butts has shared with me, it was very important that every member of the board had an opportunity to participate in the meetings or sit down in one-on-ones with Dr. Butts to give that feedback. But in our meeting Tuesday, he had mentioned to me that you were willing to come down. And so when I posed it to the board, whether or not they felt we needed one last opportunity, one last comb over as a final board to meet with you, everyone was in agreement. That was something that we wanted to do, as well as giving the public an opportunity to hear from you as well. And so I'm so very thankful that you were able to come down with quick notice because we weren't sure what your schedule was like. So I just want to thank you for coming down, being available, being as transparent as you were with your responses, and as you stated, there's some tension there, but you're aware of the history. Everyone here is very supportive and very protective of Benton Harbor area schools, the Benton Harbor community, and our children. And so, of course, you know, it's not personal to you. We just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that us entering the partnership is something that's going to be a benefit to our district and not a hindrance. So I thank you for being here, for supporting us, and being willing to have this conversation. So if everyone would please join me in giving her a round of applause. We thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, President Robinson. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to this because this is really important. This is very important for our kids. So we're gonna bump heads, I'm sure. We're gonna pull out some hair. I don't have very much left at this stage in my life.
I can give you a couple strings.
But the goal is for us to be able to look back as part of the history to see where we are now, and then moving forward, what the future holds for us. So I'm excited about the opportunity. I think we're all in this space for this particular day for a particular reason. And I'm a firm believer that we'll get there. And I want someone in my last days, if I need an operation, to look up and the surgeon, you know, says, hey, I went to Benton Harbor area schools, you know, I'm a graduate, and I can say, yes, I want that person to do the surgery. You have a lot of bright kids. You have a very passionate community, and you have a lot of support, and that's what this work will take. So honesty, we're going to be honest. We're going to move forward. We're going to work on building the trust. We're going to do the hard work. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, and thank you to the public for your question and answers and for being here with us. We did have a meeting Tuesday, so for you all to come back on Thursday and be here to support us through this process, we really appreciate it. And as stated, I am not attempting to rush you all through the question and answer, but we do want to make sure we give everybody an opportunity to speak. And I know sometimes you can begin with a question. Your intention is to ask a question, but you have maybe a 3-minute explanation prior to the question. And we have an open public comment opportunity for you all to get your comments expressed. So I just wanted to make sure that we were able to focus on the Q&A in that particular point of the agenda. So thank you all. Next, we have Dr. Butts. He's just going to give us an update about the podcast and virtual town hall he has planned.
Thank you, Madam President. The virtual town hall / podcast has been created and edited. I wanted to wait to make sure that Ms. Chapman had a chance, and also it was a request from the board. I think particularly from Ms. Gavin, thank you for making sure that we have our history there. So it will be coming out soon. The board has had a chance to vet the video along with the partner with MDE and the OPD Office of Partnership Districts. So they've had a chance to look at it as well and make any corrections and or edits to make sure that we got all the information correct. So that will be posted soon with the blessing of the board. And that was my part on that.
Thank you. All right, so my goal was to get us out of here today at 7:30. It's 7:45. So we're not gonna be here any later than 8 o'clock if we can do that. We only have 2 more items on the agenda. Student support services is just a purchase of custodial equipment. Treasurer Creighton already gave us I think it was Treasurer Creighton and maybe Secretary Triplett both mentioned that we would be getting a proposal for the purchase of custodial equipment. So I'm going to pass the mic to Chief Corson so he can go over staff report SS1. And then you'll see that the proposal information is directly behind it. You have the floor.
Would you like me to just read the staff report?
Yes.
Staff report S1, school cleaning equipment approval, purchases over $28,048 need board approval according to the most recent State of Michigan Department of Education threshold. Facts and analysis. Upgrades to individual school equipment will allow the district to more efficiently clean and maintain our existing facilities. Policy reference 6320 to purchasing. strategic plan reference facilities and operations. Benton Harbor area schools will develop, implement, and evaluate a fiscally responsible plan that will ensure physical and psychological safety. Recommended action that the Benton Harbor area school Board of Education vote to approve the purchase of facility cleaning equipment in the amount of $116,105.
Madam President,
Are you getting ready to make a motion or did you have a question?
I need to make the motion before. the
Oh,
question.
go ahead.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we approve staff report SS1 with one revision. I would like to change the amount to 120,000. I think it'll be easier for us to track. And it'll give a little room if any small details may change.
All right, so a motion has been made to approve staff report SS1 with a correction to the amount of $120,000 just to give the district additional space for purchases that may be needed. Is there a second or support of staff report SS1 with the noted amendment?
Support.
The motion was made by Treasurer Creighton and supported by Trustee Gavin that we approve staff report SS1 with the correction of noting the amount to $120,000. Any additional questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes, Madam
I'm gonna go ahead. I wanted to notate, given that this is quite a costly purchase, do we anticipate having any systems in place to ensure that we are keeping track of the equipment noted?
That has been at the forefront of our discussions within the facilities meeting, as well as our discussions with our facility director. Even this morning, we assured that we had a place for the location of this equipment and an ability to secure it.
Thank you. Secretary Triplett, you have the floor.
Yes, I look here on this report and I think that we have been doing some great work in the facilities committee. And so I noticed that this is the same that was presented. And where it says ride on scrubber. I think one thing that we talked about in it, this is one ride on scrubber. And we have 3 schools. And so also with the $17,220, the price has changed to $14,000. And so I don't know why this report was not revised with the 3 scrubbers, a scrubber for each school. And it should have been brought before the Board of Education because that's what we discussed at the facilities committee meeting. So if anybody has talked to someone since then, I'm not sure why it's not on there. I don't think if we're going to make sure that we have these things in place and that we're going to do these things, I don't think that we need to be moving from building to building. We also discussed, we didn't just discuss this as far as but a cleaning and what have you. Our facility, our custodians have been sweeping with brooms. And I think that it is very critical that each building have what they need in order to make sure that these buildings look good. We have walked through these buildings on several occasions. And we have people that are really working. I mean, I don't see what the problem is with them not being in, with each building have a riding scrubber because it also aligns with what we allegedly spent during the COVID pandemic. So I would like to have that for, to move that one up. The ride on scrubber, that each school has one so that our buildings can be clean. As a matter of fact, COVID is coming back up, but we need to make sure that all of our schools are equally equipped so that each staff is able to do the work that we are going to expect them to do. And we also, as Chief Corson said, we will be inspecting what we expect.
I'm not sure if there's any clarification that can be provided. I don't know how comfortable I feel with us voting to approve something that would require that we amend the amount so many different ways. So were you all urgently trying to get this purchase made or what was your deadline for? Either of you can answer.
The recommendation from the facilities committee and our facilities chair who just spoke was that we would bring this back up and have another meeting. I think this meeting was scheduled yesterday. And
they
so
just
someone just
anticipated
rushed it
putting
on
it-
there,
Yeah.
but we did not have a follow-up conversation. I'm sorry, I did miss that detail about the ride-on scrubber. And I wonder if some clarification even could be provided, or if this is something that we might need to table, or do we have the information available? Because
So
what's the difference between 7 motor scrubbers and a ride-on scrubber?
So what I would state at this particular time, because it was mentioned previously at the board meeting, and then this opportunity was taken to put it there, I was under the impression that this, as it stood, had been vetted. And if it hasn't, I think that it might be in the best interest of the board to table this vote until things can be updated as they should be.
President Robinson?
You have the floor.
I'm just wondering, is it possible to get an answer to the question today? I really hate making staff wait for the materials that they need in order to, care for their buildings. What, can Mr. Corson explain why the number is different?
I'm not opposed at all. Or Dr. Butts, it's perfectly fine. I just don't, go ahead, Dr. Butts.
So this was the original proposal that we had. And so what the 2 additional scrubbers, when I asked Dr. Bullocks, our facilities director, those were more of wants. But what the material that we have presented today are the necessities that we need. And we could come back to add those on there to make sure that we have them during the summer. But for what we were asking for tonight were kind of immediate needs to ensure that going into the summer, we had the appropriate equipment.
So with that, President Robinson, with this being an urgent need and the only discrepancy is adding on, I'm wondering if we can just move forward with the vote to give them what they need, and then they come back to us later with the additional
Scrubbers.
the additional
Right.
scrubbers.
Madam President,
You have the floor, Treasurer Craig.
with my original motion, I would like to yield to our facilities director for a recommendation if he feels that we need to table this, or if he's comfortable with us taking a vote on this motion.
That would be used. Are you saying the
yeah.
director or the chair?
Yeah, the chair,
I think I can go with that because we did talk about the urgency and what they needed to do, because we want them this summer to be able to do the work and what have you, again, so with this amount right here, then you guys can go through and add the additional, what we would need for the additional, for the 2 other ones, for the other 2 schools.
Okay. All right, so with that being said, if there's so just to be clear, everyone has gotten the clarifications needed. And just so you all know, I get uncomfortable when we start changing too much of the things that are noted on what we're voting on. And so that's why I was asking whether it was something we needed to table or not. But if we are saying that we are comfortable with the estimate as it stands, and we're gonna go forward with $120,000 noted on staff report SS1. If there's no additional questions or concerns, then I am perfectly fine and support everyone in us moving forward with the vote.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Madam President.
Yeah.
My only concern or recommendation would be if we could find some kind of tracking system, or like AirTag or something. A $27,000 purchase or a $17,000 piece of equipment. I think we need some kind of tracking device on it, because it can easily be wheeled out, right? So if there's something that we can do to track those. I had a refrigerator once that walked out a little, so I think it'll be helpful if
That's
that
why I
was
said,
taken into consideration.
system, what is the systems in place for keeping track of this information?
You can make a motion to table it.
Madam President, just in closing, as chairman of the facilities committee, all of these things that you're asking, and this again, it's like you said, and we've done this before, like in the Human Resource Committee and different things, we've had discussion in our committee meetings, but sometimes we don't do well
At
at communicating it. all of these discussions that you guys are talking about, these were things that we discussed right off the top. This stuff will not walk out of this district. And we definitely talked about that and how it has, and this is not being accusatory of anybody or pointing our fingers, but we must inspect what we do expect. And so this is an investment, and we're going to make sure that it is kept up, insured, and on point. So I would like to, if we can, as trustee Gavin and Treasurer Creighton said, I would like us to go with what the motion that we have on the floor for $120,000. Then go ahead and get this done.
All right, Secretary Triplett, please call the vote.
President Robinson,
Yes.
Vice President Bowens,
Yes.
Secretary Triplett, yes. Treasurer Creighton,
Yes.
Trustee Rocket Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Gavin,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Teaching and Learning. Chief Batiste Waddell is going to go over the Fairplain East field trip request information.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. And actually, we have Principal Litton here that's going to do a great job of moving quickly through the field trip request information. And then when he is finished, I will read the staff report.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
All right. Okay. So last year, at Fairplain East, we went to Six Flags. It was a wonderful field trip. We took 76 kids down to Six Flags. We raised a bunch of money to go there. Our kids had a great time. This year, we're using our title dollars. We really tried to explore different opportunities about different things that we could do. And we decided to go to, or to ask for permission to go to Mackinac City and Mackinac Island for an overnight field trip with our kids as a reward trip. We will be using title dollars to do this field trip. Over the year, we've done a whole bunch of different positive behavior approaches with our kids, and we want to do a culminating event for our students who have been doing some great things. I know one specifically who really probably wants to go. And we definitely want to make this trip to Mackinac City. I know that one of the things that's going to come up here, as you guys asked me, is what experience do you have with overnight field trips? While I was in Tennessee as an 8th grade social studies teacher, I led our 8th grade social studies trip to Washington, D.C. for 2 years in a row. So I have experience with this. We will be doing parent meetings, probably 2 or 3 prior to this event. We have all the documents ready to go. All I need is your wonderful approval so that we can make this trip happen. So, and again, you guys probably have my terrible writing. I apologize. I was a social studies teacher. That's my prediction.
Thank you, Principal Litton. Staff report 1. Subject is request for overnight field trip for students at Fairplain East Elementary School. Today's date is the 13th. Reason for board approval. The board shall approve field trips and other district-sponsored trips which are planned to keep students out of the district overnight or longer or out of the state. Facts and analysis. The 4th and 5th grade students at Fairplain East Elementary will travel to Mackinac City and Island to study Michigan history. This trip is tied to Fairplain East Elementary, multi-tiered systems and supports, positive behaviors, interventions, and supports reward system to recognize academic achievement and good behavior. The trip is scheduled for June 7th through the 8th of 2023. This is an overnight trip where the students will celebrate the community and friendships they have built, as well as reward them for their hard work this school year. It is anticipated that 100 students and at least 10 chaperones will attend. The cost of this trip will be funded by Title I dollars. Policy reference 2340, field and other district-sponsored trips. Recommended action that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education vote to approve the overnight field trip to Mackinac Island and Mackinac City, Michigan for Fairplain East Elementary School.
Is there a motion to approve staff report T1?
So moved.
Is there a second or support?
Support.
The motion was made by Secretary Triplett and supported by Trustee Gavin. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding staff report T1? Hearing none, Secretary Triplett, can you please call the vote?
President Robinson,
Yes.
Vice President Bowens,
Yes.
Secretary Triplett, yes. Treasurer Creighton,
Yes.
Trustee Rocket Martin,
Yes.
Trustee Gavin,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, so we have gotten through all of the business of today. I did not have any old business or new business noted because we just met 2 days ago for 4 or 5 hours. So we're gonna proceed to open public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment that hasn't already had an opportunity to be heard by the board? No, this is open public comment. You can speak again.
Same thing, same name, Marion Triplett, 818 South Crystal, Benton Charter Township. And as we run to the end of the school year, I'm always interested. My children did very well in Benton Harbor Area School. They were the top at what they did. And I know it's happening. I had that food stamp card and Medicare, but my children did very well. And so I'm always curious. All of our children are strong. So I'd like to know what are the numbers of students who are eligible for Math Science Center? What is the number of students who have been approached to participate in dual enrollment at Lake Michigan College or Southwestern Michigan College? What number of students have been asked to participate in summer Creole program? For any number of people. Because we need to remember that we cannot be 100% zero. We have great students doing great things. And so that piece needs to get out there as well. I'm curious. I just want to know, where our students are connected. And then to this principal gentleman here, I'd be curious to know what kind of additional data you might be collecting off of your study trip. I know it's a reward, but reflective insights from experiential learning. I'd be interested to know if you're doing that, because again, those are ways that you all can highlight to the additional things that you're doing. Your CAO does great work putting stuff on Facebook, but more needs to be out there so that we get a balanced view of what is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for open public comment?
Boy, I just wanted to recircle back to the partnership agreement. If it doesn't happen now, it needs to take place, maybe an addendum or a rider onto this agreement that we get to tell the story. What has taken place with ISD, MED, and the rest of the state. So we can go on the record and that we show our partnership with them, and this is what has taken place. If it doesn't happen now, I know there's time to do it. Let's get that taken care of. Because to hold that accountable and wipe the slate clean and wipe the record clean and let us tell our story, what we went through and why there is a partnership agreement on the table right now and what took place and who had those roles and what took place. I think that needs to be at some point in some time needs to take place as a rider or an addendum or something at some time as we go into this another agreement, as we pull ourselves out from where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for open public comment?
You should.
All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to superintendent announcements and comments.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank the public for coming out and participating and sharing their input of the partnership agreement. I'd like to thank each and every one of our board members for participating in the partnership agreement and the hard work and the questions that you put there for those of us that were not here for the past and to educate us on as we move forward. And I thank you for your input.
All right, thank you. Trustee Rocket Martin. Next is, I'm sorry, board member announcements and comments. Trustee Rocket Martin.
Okay.
Well, I always start with the trustees and it's always a different trustee, so.
Didn't say my comments. No, I was thinking with the partnership. The question that came to my mind was, if not a partnership, then what? Then what do we get? And so with that being said, keeping that in mind, will we get something worse or will we get something, comparable to what what they're presenting to us or what they're allowing us to work in, the structure they're allowing us to work in. So you might just want to keep that in mind as we go through this, this process that we have to do because of the fact of mandates from the federal government. The other thing is, the equipment in the schools. My husband was like the head custodian and became the supervisor. The equipment basically wore out. It tore up and wore out and it was just never replaced. And like we do so many times, like we've been doing with our boilers, we piecemeal, we take stuff off this to put on this, to put on this, to put on this. So a lot of it was just worn out and old. And I'm so glad that we are giving our staff what they need to do to take care of our buildings. However, my thing is, I'm still for new schools. I believe our kids deserve brand new schools with all of the bells and whistles that every other district has for their kids. And so, you know, I know we should say, don't look at Berrien Springs or whatever, but Berrien Springs has our kids. They have 2 bus loads twice a day, 3-4 bus loads twice a day. They come out to LMC full of students, Benton Harbor resident students. So
Trustee
we have
Rocket
to
Martin,
do
please wrap up your comment.
you know, and what they're providing for their students. Our kids deserve just as much or more. So, you know, I always keep that in mind, you know, why can't we have new schools? Why can't we ask the state? We're asking them for everything else. Why can't we ask them to build us a new elementary school? And a new middle school and a new high school? We pay taxes. We, you know, why can't we? So, you know, if we go shoot, let's shoot for the stars.
Thank you, Trustee Gavin.
I'm wondering if it's possible that sometimes, sometimes I could be closer to the end.
I can,
Question.
I'm not sure what, go ahead.
That's a question.
More than likely, you'll always be in the first 3 to be called for comments. Unless somebody else says that they want to swap out with you in a given
I can
day.
swap.
Go ahead,
Thank you.
Treasurer Creighton.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone for coming. I do actually have to leave, so I'm not gonna take up a lot of time making a comment. I'm late, but I just want to say that I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve on this board. I definitely think, you know, this dialogue today, like always, is good. You know, it was some things that I hadn't thought about or some things that I thought about that I wasn't really sure if, you know, it was the reality or if it was just me, you know, living in the past. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity to dialogue. It was a struggle for me to get to this meeting, but I'm glad that I came. I'm looking forward to the great work that we're going to make sure that comes out of this partnership agreement. Again, I would like that if we could add those 2 things, that'll be helpful. And then if we can get a draft, as soon as they're added, which hopefully could be before the weekend, since this will take some more looking into it in a process of turnaround. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the public and the input. I hope you guys keep coming to the table and sharing and helping us as we navigate these troubling waters. And that's all I have. So I look forward to our meeting next week to talk about our next topic that we have. And thank you all for the good work tonight.
What meeting do we have? You mean your committee meeting?
We have another public forum next week, right?
May 2nd.
Oh, May 2nd. Okay.
Girl,
Well,
don't
good. I
scare
get a
me
break.
like that.
I have to go because I'm late and I
Okay,
got
go
2
ahead.
little
Go
bosses
ahead.
at home.
All right, Trustee Gavin.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. Your voices really do make a difference. And I do wish that you could have been involved even more. I think that it would have only been fair for you to have access to the document. This is your school district. This is not our school district. We represent you, but we need to know how you feel and what you think about these things is so important to hear from you, I believe, not just on the back end, but throughout the entire process somehow. That really matters to me. And I was just filled with every person who spoke. I just want to be clear that I am all for new schools as well. I am also very much in favor of us taking care of the schools that we have with children in them and being very adamant about giving our staff and our students everything that they need in order to be successful as quickly as we can give it to them. I think that, there's been, some question as to whether it's, fiscally responsible to, ask for new things so quickly, but it's not quickly when things are 70 years old. That's not quick, right? That is like well past its lifetime, two to three times over. And so sometimes we save money when we go ahead and buy the new best thing on the front end. And I think that, I'm just really grateful that, we're looking into doing those things. And I'm hoping that moving forward, when we're making decisions, we're thinking about that child in that classroom and that teacher that's caring for them and making sure that this decision is going to be in their best interest, because if we don't, we lose them, right? We have to get trust in order to get our students back. And so when we make those decisions, we need to think about, what are we doing to cause students to leave and what can we do to make sure that they stay and we attract them. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Gavin. Secretary Triplett.
Muskegon Heights has a brand new high school. And it has 58 students in it. Or not more than 100 students. And I too, I am an advocate for our kids having the very best, because they deserve it. But you can build a brand new building. But until we bring back those 4,000 students who live in this community, who people made the assumption that our parents did not care, and they let us know that they did care. And they let us know with their money that they cared about what was going on in the school district. I think that it is important and it is imperative that we, people say we put kids first, students first, and it has been some time since I've really been able to observe it in the manner in which I think it deserves to be observed. Or be seen. For me, I think that it is important, it was kind of disturbing to me. I was talking to my wife and she was trying to find out about the partner agreement and where can I find it. And this, I said, well, I have it. She said, well, I don't want that privilege. I'm not going to use that because you're on the Board of Education. I want to be able to be respected. And I want to come to this table as our citizens would come to this table and be able to see things. And if it's not available, then I am very concerned. So I'm quite sure you probably can only imagine what I go through. Like in the morning, at night, every time something hit the newspaper, it's a tough situation. And so I do want to close with this, that I love our board. I think that we have an astute board. I think that we have a qualified board. And I'm praying that we are able to remain intact, to be able to continue the work that we are doing for this district. And I had a previous engagement, so that I could not cancel. So thank you again. Now you didn't beep that thing twice when other people get something. So y'all better get control of the phones and the beeper. But yes, so that's why I was late coming tonight. I didn't think that you all would still be here, but I drove by and you did not let me down. I was still here. But thanks again for tonight, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Secretary Triplett. Vice President Bowens.
I would like to thank the public for coming out. I just want to set the record straight. I respect you and admire your leadership and have full confidence that you representing us at the table with the consent agreement. And I was.
Partnership.
Partnership, right, sorry, partnership. And I have full confidence in the ability of our board president. The public has elected us to represent them to make the tough decisions. So I, again, support our president in sitting at the negotiating table and putting the Benton Harbor spirit and the Tiger Pride at the table for us. So thank you. I also want to say, I too support new schools. I support having a quality building where our kids can receive a quality education, where we're not having to cancel school or close school down because of leaks or incidents. Just today, Countryside Charter School just uploaded their beam of they're building a new school. Everyone is building but Benton Harbor. It's a choice. Do you want a Cadillac or a Pinto? One of my favorite quotes that keep me inspired is by the great Harriet Tubman, and I close with this. If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going. Don't ever stop. Keep going. If you want to taste of freedom, keep going. So you may read some stuff about me. You may see it in the newspaper. Trustee Bowens didn't do this, didn't do that. I'm putting the children of Benton Harbor first, and I'm going to keep going with the spirit of Harriet Tubman. Keep going. Good night and have a good day.
Thank you, Vice President Bowens. I will be short and sweet. Just want to thank you all for taking the time to come out yet again this week. We had a very lengthy but well-needed meeting Tuesday. And so for us to be able to make the accommodations to come back with a one-day notice, I appreciate you all greatly. And I just want to say, I thank Vice President Bowens for his comment as to his faith that he has in me. The original partnership agreement committee only required a representative from the board, which was the Board of Education president. But as you guys are aware, we have had many of the board members sit in those meetings because it was truly important to me and for the district that the full board had an opportunity to participate in this process and that updates were given and you all were in the know. One thing that I've noticed though is that, and I'm getting to a space where you all are very good at speaking and saying what you feel at the table. And so I'm going to get in alignment with that. I feel as though I do an excellent job at representing this Board of Education and ensuring that your voices are heard when needed and that each of you are protected, whether it's protected from the public, protected from administration, or protected from each other. But one of the things that I've noticed is that when it comes to my accountability and responsibility as the president of the board, it's often minimized. I'm just the chair of the meetings. I'm not just the chair of the meetings. I'm the president of the Board of Education. I'm the spokesperson, and I speak for each trustee and the only person that can speak for the board in general, unless I designate it to someone else to speak in my absence. And so I've noticed that there is no concern when it comes to me having the accountability for the agenda or the accountability for having conversations with the Department of Education or the Department of Treasury or any of the other heavy loads that I have to bear. But then for some reason, when we get to the table, I'm just the chair. And so I kind of want people to be conscious of that. I do not take any advantage of power, ego and power in being the president of the board. I think I do a great job of serving with humility. And I ensure that each person at the table does have a full share of the say-so being a member of the board. And so I just wanted to make sure that I expressed how comments like that make me feel. Because I am one trustee and I get one vote, but I have the responsibility of protecting the full board, and that's a double burden to bear. So please be conscious of that in your interactions with me. I appreciate you all. I value you all. And just know the next time one of you all call me with a concern or a complaint, I'm going to remind you I'm just the chair. So with that being said, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn.
I support
The motion has been made by Trustee Bowens and supported by Trustee Raquel Martin. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes, I think that I may have missed something, but I do want to close with this in all sincerity. I can truly say, you know, that, and I think we worked through that level of, when it comes to administration, that we are all board members and that we are all employers. However, when it comes to our president leads this work. And I think she does an absolutely amazing job. We have rules, bylaws, decorum, and all those things. So again, I don't know what I missed, but I do want to say that I voted for you for president.
Thank you.
And
I think everyone did.
yeah, I support you. And I'm gonna leave that alone at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Triplett, please call the vote for adjournment.
President Robinson,
Yes.
Vice President Bowen,
Yes.
Secretary Triplett, yes. Trustee Gavin,
Yes.
Trustee Rocket Martin. Yes. The meeting is adjourned.
The meeting is adjourned officially at 8:23 PM. Have a good evening.